Okay, so I've got to apologize for my first video. I didn't tell my family I was streaming, so they didn't know that I was making a video, so they kept interrupting me. Except for my brother, who knew I was streaming. He was just being rude. So, hey, I'm Faizamoda, and today I'm going to be reading Chapter 2 of The Apple Orchard by Susan Wakes. Chapter 2. Seated at a view table in San Francisco's best bar, Tess was drinking a dirty martini, salty with olive brine. The olives were the closest thing she'd have to dinner. As always, she had worked right up until happy hour. She worked. That was who she was and what she did with herself. She worked. And she counted herself lucky to have a job she loved. Yet, meeting Miss Winter, seeing the old lady all alone with her cats, had unsettled Tess. The encounter tapped into her most secret fear, that she would go through life alone and end up surrounded by treasures with no one to share them with. Working kept her from thinking too hard about how alone she was. Backing away from the thought, she reminded herself of today's accomplishment and of the fact that she had good friends to celebrate with. She and her friends had a standing happy hour at the top of the Mark, crowning the historic Mark Hopkins Hotel, perched at a pinnacle of Russian Hill. It was a San Francisco landmark, ultra-touristy, but known locally for its stunning views, well-made martinis, and live music. Thanks to her peripatetic childhood, she'd grown up with very little in the way of friends and family. Yet here in the heart of San Francisco, she'd made her own family. A small and convivial tribe of people like her. Young professionals who were independent and ambitious. And fun. Gypsies and geniuses. Hard workers who also remembered to kick back. There was Lydia, an interior designer who was a constant source of client referrals for Tess. She found things like Duncan Fife sofas and stickly tables stashed in people's attics and storage units. She understood the adrenaline surge of a treasure hunt better than anyone, Tess knew. The third member of their trio was Neely, a wine broker who sometimes did business with Sheffield House. She had brought a new guy along tonight, Russell, who couldn't keep his eyes off her dress. Neely kept sending secret messages to Tess's phone. Well, what do you think of him? He can't keep his eyes off your dress. You say that like it's a bad thing. The two of them grinned at one another and lifted their glasses. You look like you're up to something, said Jude Lockhart, a guy Tess worked with at Sheffield. That's 'cause we are, she said, patting the seat beside her. Jude gave each of them a kiss and shook hands with Nathan, who was Lydia's steady boyfriend. Neely introduced him to Russell, her date. Tess loved the ease and charm of her friends. She loved that they were all still young and fun enough to meet and hang out after work. She especially loved that tonight she had something to celebrate and friends with whom to share her news. I hit the jackpot today, she said. Ooh, spill, said Neely. She turned to her date and explained, Tess is a professional treasure hunter. Really. She's like a modern-day Indiana Jones. Not exactly, said Tess. I didn't have to fight off any snakes today. She told them about finding the Tiffany service at Miss Winter's. It turns out she used to be a garage sale addict and a bit of a hoarder. Most of the things she had were junk, but I found some other pieces too. You need to knock it off. She described the set of Ludwig Moser cordial glasses, a smallish woodcut image, pencil signed by Charles H. Richard, and a jade cuff from pre-war China. With no particular sentimental attachment to any of the pieces, Miss Winter had cheerfully agreed to consign them to Sheffield House. Damn, girl, said Neely, lifting her green apple martini. Good work. Everyone around the lounge table raised their glasses. If you don't watch out, you're going to get yourself promoted, said Jude. Tess felt a thrill of nervousness. She knew she was being considered for a position in New York City, a big move in more ways than one. It would represent a huge leap for her, vaulting her to the top of her profession. Jude regarded her with a combination of respect and envy. Somehow, they'd managed to be associates without becoming rivals. When Tess had first met Jude at an auction in London, she'd developed a severe crush on him. After all, it wasn't every day you met with a guy with an Oxford education and the face of a matinee idol. Their crush hadn't lasted, though. She'd quickly discovered they were too much alike. Skittish about relationships, mystified by people who flung themselves into crazy love and ended up getting hurt. Eventually, the two of them had settled into a comfortable friendship. They were working colleagues, drinking buddies, and sometimes during the lonely times of the year, like the holidays, they pretended together that the loneliness didn't matter. Leave it to Tess to find a fortune in some old lady's pantry, said Lydia, snuggling close to Nathan. The two of them shared a private look. Then Nathan gestured at a passing waiter. Jude nodded. Tess seems to have a thing with little old ladies. My favorite is that time she found the program from a Giants game signed by Willie Mays in a client's piano bench along with her sheet music. She remembered he was such a nice young man, Tess said, smiling at the memory. She had no idea she was sitting on a treasure every time she sat down on the piano to play. You'll never walk alone. I swear, you have the meanest touch, said Neely. She laughed. Hey, don't put that on me. Remember, Midas was the guy who turned everything to gold, including his little kids. I thought you didn't like kids, Jude pointed out. But I like Cheetos, and what would happen if all my Cheetos turned to gold? The world would come to an end, said Lydia. Besides, you do too like kids, Tess. You just don't want to admit it and seem uncool. I like kids and I'm totally cool, Neely pointed out. And you'll come around, Tess. You think people who don't like kids fall in love when they have their own. Hey, speak for yourself, Jude protested. Watch it, Russell, my man. That ticking sound you hear? That's her biological clock. Russell put his arm around his date. I think I can handle her. I don't need handling, Neely protested. Cuddling, yes. Handling, not so much. Tess's phone vibrated, signaling an incoming call, and she paused to check it. Not recognizing the number, she let it go to voicemail. There, she thought. Not all work and no play. I can resist a buzzing phone. As if that makes her cool. Speaking of things that are great, Nathan gestured at the waiter, who had just showed up with a bottle of Crystal and a tableside bucket. Crystal, said Tess. I didn't realize my story was that awesome. There's some more awesome news. He stood up as two older couples entered the bar area, a few younger people trailing behind. What's going on? Jude asked. With obvious excitement, Nathan introduced everyone to his and Lydia's parents, and various brothers and sisters. Family resemblances were fascinating to Tess. Lydia's two sisters looked like a slightly skewed versions of Lydia herself, sharing her nut brown hair and button nose. Nathan's dad was tall and gangly like his son. An air of excitement swirled around them. Families were the ultimate mystery. As much as they fascinated her, they also struck her as messy and complicated. Yet she couldn't stop herself from wondering what it must feel like to be surrounded by people you were connected to by blood and history. Her friends were her family, her job was her life, and she had a dream for her future, but every once in a while, an intense yearning slipped in, sharp as a slender blade. Lydia and I wanted to get everyone together tonight, Nathan was saying. Our families and our closest friends.
What are you reading?
We have an announcement. No way. Neely clasped her hands over her mouth, and her sparkled with delight. Tess's heart sped up, because she suddenly knew what was coming next. Nathan smiled with a glow of happiness so intense, Tess imagined she could feel the warmth of it. Mom and Dad, Barb and Ed, were engaged. Lydia took a small green box from her pocket and placed the diamond solitaire on her finger. Lydia's mother squealed, and the two of them shared a hug, their eyes closing blissfully. The sisters joined the group, and the two families commingled. Hugs and handshakes made the rounds. Neely, ever the organizer, immediately took charge of finding out the date, the venue, the wedding party, the wine list. Watching the happy couple, Tess was surprised to feel the burn of tears behind her eyes and a lump in her throat. Congratulations, my friend, she said to Lydia. I'm so happy for you. Lydia clasped Tess's hands. I couldn't wait to tell you. Can you believe it? Me? Getting married? Tess laughed past her tears. We used to swear marriage was for girls who have no imagination. She recalled the late-night room. Drunk alogies they used to indulge when they were roommates just out of school. Whatever happened to those girls? Tess didn't miss the drinking, but she did miss the camaraderie. Even as she felt a surge of happiness for her friend, there was another feeling tucked away in a dark corner of her heart. She felt the tiniest twinge of envy. That was before I learned what this kind of love felt like. Lydia gazed adoringly at Nathan, who had abandoned his glowing with happiness look and was now chugging a beer, oblivious to the female sentiment. Now I'm unbearable. Lately all I dream about is doing is keeping house and having kids. She giggled at Tess's aghast expression. Don't worry, it's not contagious. I'm not worried. Just promise he'll talk about other stuff, too. Of course we will. No talk of domesticity until it's your turn. Tess admired the ring, a brilliant Marquise-cut diamond in a platinum setting. It was remarkable, seeing her friend so proudly displaying it, a glittery symbol declaring to the world that someone loved her, that she was no longer going it alone. Don't hold your breath, Tess said. I don't actually want to turn. You say that now. Just wait until you've met Prince Charming. If you spot him, feel free to give him my number. Lydia went off to show off her ring to her sisters and in-laws to be.
Are you gonna have ramen?
No.
Okay.
Neely
Sorry,
was
guys.
already talking down the dress sizes for the bridal party. Still startled by the emotion that sneaked up on her, Tess dabbed at her eyes with a cocktail napkin. I completely agree, Jude said, moving next to her. This is a tragic turn of events. Don't be mean. Look how happy they are. She watched as Lydia's family gathered around her. Mom, Dad, two look-alike sisters, and felt a lump in her throat again. Look at you, swept up in the romance of it all, Jude said, studying the happy couple. Lydia and Nathan couldn't keep their eyes off each other. She sighed. Yeah, I guess I am. Come on, Delaney. You just said not to hold my breath until it's your turn. Don't go all soft and mushy on me. Why not? Lots of people like things that are soft and mushy. People in old age homes, maybe. Be nice. I'm always nice. Then pour me another drink. I'm celebrating tonight, too, she reminded him. He refilled her champagne flute. Ah, yes. We're celebrating the fact that you've done the firm of a Holmstrom original. Don't be bitter. We're getting a mint condition Tiffany's service right down to the sugar tongs. The other things as well. I'd rather have it all. What was the old lady thinking, hanging on to the necklace? Is going to bring her mother back from a Nazi death camp? Gee, how about I ask her exactly that? Tess drank more champagne. Okay, sorry, I'm sure you tried your best. She's a nice lady, kind, filled with stories. I wish I had more time to spend with her. Do me a favor and get a ton of money for her, Tiffany. Of course, I'll send over our breasts to praise her. By the way, Nathan's brother is checking you out. He glanced over her shoulder. And are you available? If you mean, am I seeing someone at the moment? The answer is no. What happened to Motorcycle Dude? Rode off into the sunset without me, she confessed. And Popeye the Sailor Man? She laughed. The Navy guy, you mean? Elton sailed off into the sunset. What is it with guys and sunsets? You seem heartbroken. Nah. In order to have her heart broken, she had to give it into someone's care, and she simply wasn't willing to do that. Too dangerous, and men were too careless. Both her mother and grandmother were proof of that. Tess was determined not to become a third-generation loser. Tess knew what she was good at, primarily her work. In that arena, she was in control. She had been raised to keep a firm grip on things. Matters of the heart, however, were impossible to control. She found intimacy unsettling, especially in the light of her friend's defection to marriage and even starting families. I'm just going to try and keep track of the men you date, said Jude. None of them stick around long enough for me to remember their names anyway. Ouch, she said. Touché. Do you secretly hate men? He inquired. Could that be the problem? God, no, I love men, she said. She broke eye contact and turned to stare out the window. Night lay over the city in a blanket of gold stars. I'm just not very good at keeping them around. You want to get a room and make out for a while? Jude suggested, lightly running his finger from his shoulder down to her elbow. She gave his arm a smack. Don't be a creep. Just being practical. We're the only ones here who aren't coupled up, so I thought, what, us? We would destroy each other. You're no fun, Sister Mary Teresa. When are you going to give in to my charms? How about, never. She tossed the last of her champagne. Does never work for you? You're killing me. Fine, I'm going on safari to soothe my poor rejected ego. Bending down, he gave her a peck on the cheek, then smiled at her with fond familiarity. Later, gorgeous. I've got a friend to call. Okay, that's depressing. No, going home alone is depressing. He moved toward the moodily lit bar, where young women were lined up like ducks in a shooting gallery. Tess had no doubt he'd make a friend. Jude always made an outstanding first impression. Not only did he look as though he'd stepped out of an Armani ad, he had a way of gazing at women that made her feel as though she'd instantly become the center of his world. Tess saw straight through him, though. In his own way, he was as lonely and damaged as she was. She set her champagne flute and went to look out the window. San Francisco on a clear night was pure magic. The city lights like a necklace of diamonds around the bay. The sky as soft as black velvet. The bridges were swathed by golden chains formed by their cables. Boats of every size gilded back and forth in the water. The skyscrapers lined up like gold bars in varying heights. Even the traffic in the streets below moved along in ruby-studded chains of gold. Tess had visited dozens of the world's cities: Paris, Johannesburg, Mumbai, Shanghai, but San Francisco was her favorite. It was the kind of city where being independent was valued, not pitied or regarded as a problem to be rectified by well-meaning friends. She approached the newly engaged couple to say her goodbyes. Watching her friends together, flushed and smiling, joy shining from their eyes, Tess felt a twinge of bittersweetness. Lydia was one of those people who made love look easy. She wasn't naive enough to regard Nathan as perfect. Instead, she simply trusted him with her heart. Tess wondered if that was a learned skill or if he had to be born with it. "I'm taking off," she said, giving Lydia a hug. "Call me." "Of course. Be careful going home." Tess left the bar and swept into the elevator. The angled mirrors of the car were oddly placed, so that her image grew smaller and smaller into infinity. But she studied that image: pale skin and freckles, wavy red hair. A Burberry trench coat she'd bought in Hong Kong for a fraction of its price in the US. She stared at her image for so long that she began to look like a stranger to herself. How was that possible? For no reason she could discern, her heart sped up, hammering against her breastbone. Good God, how much had she had to drink? Her breathing grew shallow, and her upper chest and her throat felt tight. She gripped the handrail, trying to steady herself against a wave of dizziness. Maybe she was coming down with something, she thought, as the sensations persisted, accompanying her all the way down the opulent lobby of the hotel. No, she didn't have time to come down with something. It was out of the question. There were mirrors in the lobby as well, and a glance told Tess she didn't look like a woman who was about to collapse. But she felt like one, and the feeling chased her out the door. She dashed outside into the night, heading toward the lower Nob Hill neighborhood where she lived. No need for a taxi. The brisk walk might do her good. Her heels clicked nervously on the pavement. The metallic squeal of a streetcar pierced her eardrums, her vision blurred, in and out of sharpness, as though she were peering through binoculars and adjusting the focus. Her heart was still racing, breathing still rapid and shallow. Maybe it was the champagne, she thought. If she had a doctor, she would ask him. But she didn't have a doctor. She was 29 years old, for Pete's sake. Doctors were for sick people. She wasn't sick. She had the occasional feeling her head was going to explode. But that was all. She took out her phone and dialed her mother without much hope of getting her. Shannon Delaney was traveling somewhere in the Lot Valley in France, an area famed for its history, its wines and scenery, and notorious for its lack of cell phone signals. "Hey, it's me. Just checking in," she said. "Call me when you get a chance. Let's see, Lydia and Nathan are getting married, but you don't care about that because you don't know Lydia and Nathan. I found a complete set of Tiffany today, and some other stuff. Call me." She put her phone away, wondering when the jittery feelings would abate. A cigarette. That was what she needed. Yes, she was a smoker, having fallen thoughtlessly into the habit on her first major business trip to France. She knew the horrific health effects as well as the next person, and naturally, she had intended to quit one day. Soon, just not tonight. Stepping into the shelter of darkened doorway, she rummaged in her bag for a red and white package. Then, the challenge. A match. As always, her bag was a mess. A repository of makeup, receipts, ticket stubs, notes to herself, bits of information about things she was working on, business cards of people whose faces she'd forgotten. She also carried the tools of her trade, like a jeweler's loupe and a penlight. There was even a small bag filled with lavender scones from Miss Winter, who had insisted on sending Tess home with a supply. Finally, she hit pay dirt, a box of matches from Vivo, a trendy bistro, where she'd gone on a date with someone. A guy who, for whatever reason, hadn't called her again. She couldn't remember who, but she'd recalled that the salad made with a Bosque pears and a point rise blue cheese was amazing. Maybe that was why they hadn't gone out again. He was not as memorable as the cheese. Flipping open the box, she discovered that she was down to her last cigarette. No matter. Maybe tomorrow she would quit. Putting the filter between her lips, she struck a match, but it flamed out in the breeze. She took out another match. "Excuse me." A woman pushing a battered shopping cart uphill stopped on the sidewalk near Tess. The cart was piled high with plastic bags filled with cans, a rolled-up sleeping bag, bundled clothing, a hand-lettered cardboard sign. In the front of the cart was a small, scruffy dog. Speedy's eyes caught the yellowish glow of the street lamp as the woman angled the cart on the hill. Tess was trapped in the doorway. She couldn't very well keep walking, and she couldn't avert her eyes and pretend she hadn't seen. Spare smoke? The woman asked in a voice that sounded both polite yet exhausted, slightly breathless from the uphill climb. This is my last one. I only want one. Resigned. Tess put the cigarette back in its box and handed it over. Here you go. Thanks, said the woman. Got a light? You bet. She gave over her box of matches. The woman's hands shook with a tremor as she tucked away the cigarette box and matches. How about some homemade scones? Asked Tess, holding out the bag from Miss Winter. Sure, thanks. The woman took one out and bit into it. Did you make them yourself? No, I'm useless in the kitchen. They were made by a friend? A client. She tried not to dwell on the fact that she had more clients than friends. Well, it's mighty tasty. She gave a morsel to the dog, who acted as though it was a manna from heaven. Jobim thinks so too, the woman said, chuckling with delight as the dog stretched out to lick her chin. Take care. She angled her cart down the hill, and God bless. Tess watched her go, pondering the irony of the homeless woman's words. Take care. She felt a fresh thrum of discomfort in her chest, rolling through her with a new vigor. She started walking quietly, nearly running. To where? And why the hurry? Take it easy, she whispered in time with her breathing. She repeated the phrase like a mantra, but it didn't seem to help. She fled to the door of her walk-up, fumbling with the key at the top of the stairs. Her hands shook as she unlocked the door and rushed inside, up another flight of steps, and through the faint smells of cooking and furniture polish. You're home, she said, ducking into her apartment and looking around her messy, familiar domain. There were suitcases and bags in various stages of unpacking, laundry in transition, piles of reading material, crossword puzzles, and work documents. Busy with travel and work, she was seldom home long enough to neaten things up. Still, she loved her home. She loved old things. The brown brick place was a survivor of the 1907 earthquake and fire, and proudly bore a plaque from the Historical Society. The building had a haunted history. It was a site of crime and passion, but Tess didn't mind. She'd never been superstitious. The apartment was filled with items she'd collected through the years, simply because she liked them or was intrigued by them. There was a balance between their heirlooms and kitsch. There was a common thread that seemed to be that each object had a story, like a pottery jug with a bas-relief story told in pictures, in which she found a note reading, Long may we run, Gilbert, or an antique clock on the living room wall, each of its carved figures modeled after one of the clockmaker's 12 children. She favored the unusual, so long as it appeared to have been treasured by someone, once upon a time. Her mail spilled from an antique box, containing a pigeon racing counter with a brass plate engraved from a father to a son. She hung her huge handbag on a wrought iron finial from a town library that had burned and been rebuilt in a matter of weeks by an entire community. Other people's treasures captivated her. They always had. Steeped in by hidden history, bearing the nicks and gouges and fingerprints of previous owners. She'd probably developed affinity from spending so much of her childhood in grandmother's antiques shop. Having so little in the way of family herself, she used to imagine what it might be like to have siblings, aunts and uncles, a father. Tonight, she found no comfort in her collected treasures. She paced back and forth, wishing she had an extra glass of champagne, wishing she hadn't given away her last cigarette, wishing she could call Nelia or Lydia, her best friends. But Lydia was busy being engaged, and Nelia had a new boyfriend. Tess couldn't interrupt their happy evening with a ridiculous cry for help. Yes, ridiculous, that's what you're being, she said to her image in the mirror. You don't have a single thing to worry about. What if you were really in trouble? What if you were like the Winters in the Nazi-occupied Denmark? Now there's something to fret about. Then Tess thought about the panhandler, who probably had her worries as well. Yet she seemed to face the world with a weary acceptance. She seemed content with her scones and her dog. Maybe I should get a dog, thought Tess. But no, she traveled too much to take responsible for even an air fern, let alone a dog. Yet, no matter how much she tried to ignore the hammering in her chest, she couldn't escape it. That was the one thing she'd never figured out how to run from, herself. Well, that's the end of chapter 2. I'm sorry, again, for the people interrupting me. I'm at my cousin's house, and my brother is just being rude. He knows I'm streaming, so it's not as if they don't know. Well, because they can tell when I'm reading with my computer open that I'm streaming. Anyway, don't forget to like this video and subscribe and turn on that notification bells. Okay. Anyway, have a great day. Bye.